Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. Day 3 of Sean Diddy Combs' federal trial was already drawing media frenzy, but no one expected what happened next. In a stunning move, the prosecution introduced a never-before-heard audio recording made by Prince just weeks before his death. The voice of the late music legend echoed through the courtroom, calm but haunted. As Prince named names, described private parties, and detailed what he claimed to have witnessed behind Diddy's closed doors, the entire room froze. But it was Diddy's reaction that changed the game. His carefully built persona crumbled in front of jurors as he erupted in an outburst that forced the judge to threaten contempt. This wasn't a rumor. It wasn't social media chatter. This was sworn evidence. And from that moment forward, the tone of the trial shifted forever. What Prince said, what he recorded in secret, may end up being the very testimony that brings everything crashing down. The morning of Day 3 began like the two before it, but anyone in the room could tell something was different. The buzz in the air was sharper. The legal teams moved with an urgency they hadn't shown the day prior. Reporters scrambled for seats with a new kind of tension in their posture. Some of the court's staff were even overheard saying, "Today's going to be bad for someone." No one could have predicted just how right they were. Diddy entered the room like he had every morning, wearing a sharply tailored navy suit, his trademark smirk flickering in the corners of his mouth. He nodded to the gallery. His legal team remained composed, whispering among themselves, passing papers, eyes forward. Everything looked like business as usual, until a subtle shift happened near the prosecution's table. Two tech specialists quietly brought in equipment that hadn't been present on previous days. A small black audio device, a laptop, wires. One of them gave a quiet nod to the lead prosecutor, who looked down at the table, avoiding Diddy's gaze. Something had changed. Diddy didn't notice at first. He seemed relaxed, even confident. But those who were watching closely knew something was coming. The judge entered and made an unusual statement. "Today's evidence may evoke strong reactions. I expect complete composure." No one missed the way he glanced in Diddy's direction as he said it. Then came the moment that turned a criminal trial into a historic event. The prosecution requested to present what they called critical new audio evidence.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
The defense snapped to attention, immediately objecting. They hadn't been warned about any new exhibits. The courtroom murmured. Diddy's lead attorney stood and insisted the evidence be excluded, accusing the prosecution of sandbagging. But the judge had already seen the disclosure paperwork. It had been submitted, properly, legally. The judge's ruling came down with a thud. The evidence may be played. That's when the prosecutor finally said the words that hit like a bolt of lightning. "You are about to hear the final private recording made by Prince Rogers Nelson." The courtroom froze. All phones dropped to laps. Every journalist's fingers hovered above their keyboards. Even Diddy seemed confused. He looked at his lawyers, eyes slightly wide, as if to ask, "What is this?" Then the prosecutor connected the device and pressed play. The voice that echoed through the courtroom wasn't the confident, flamboyant Prince the world knew. It was quiet, low, uneasy. "I'm making this recording because I don't know who I can trust anymore," Prince began. The tone sent chills down the spines of everyone listening. This wasn't a performance. It was a confession. In the recording, Prince said he'd attended private parties hosted by Diddy at properties in Miami, the Hamptons, and Los Angeles. He described what he saw in unsettling detail: young artists being separated from their handlers, encouraged to drink and take pills, private rooms with locked doors, cameras hidden in fixtures, no security personnel allowed inside. the exact same pattern Cassie Ventura described during her first 2 days on the stand. Prince wasn't vague. He named names. He mentioned specific dates, including a December 2015 party in Beverly Hills. And he described behavior that matched earlier witness testimony almost word for word. But what made this different, what made the courtroom shift from disbelief to alarm, was that Prince was speaking with full knowledge of what he was doing. "If something happens to me," he said, "this recording needs to go to the press or the police, either one." As Prince's voice played, Diddy's body language changed entirely. His eyes narrowed, his mouth twitched. He stopped whispering to his lawyers. He leaned forward, hunched slightly. His face was pale. Jurors began watching him as closely as they listened to the tape. Then Prince said something that broke the room. "These aren't just parties. They're traps." The silence was so complete, you could hear Prince breathing between words. In the back row, a woman visibly cried. In the front row, a reporter dropped her pen. Diddy's attorney placed a hand on his client's arm, trying to calm him. Diddy pulled away. Prince continued, explaining that he had warned Diddy about what he saw, that he approached him during an after-party in 2016 and told him the manipulation of young artists and guests had to stop. Prince claimed Diddy laughed and told him, "You might be Prince, but you're not untouchable." That line hit the courtroom like a gunshot. Diddy's lips moved. He whispered something to his team. One of his attorneys grabbed a yellow legal pad and began writing furiously. Another turned to look at the judge, as if waiting for permission to object. But there was nothing to object to. The damage was being done in real time. Just when the courtroom seemed at its most tense, when Prince's calm but damning words continued with relentless detail, Diddy snapped. The tape had moved on to describe another party, this one from March 2016, involving multiple celebrities and one disturbing incident upstairs. As Prince named the address, a location already referenced by the prosecution's forensic timeline, Diddy couldn't take it anymore. "That's a lie!" he shouted, standing suddenly. His voice echoed off the courtroom walls, startling even the bailiffs. The reaction was instant. Security rushed forward. His lawyers stood and tried to pull him back into his seat. One attorney hissed, "Sit down!" But Diddy's voice rose again. "He wasn't even there! That never happened!" The judge slammed his gavel down repeatedly. "Mr. Combs, control yourself, or I will hold you in contempt." The courtroom was now in full meltdown. Jurors exchanged shocked glances. Two looked visibly disturbed. A court sketch artist later told reporters that she had to erase and redraw Diddy's face 3 times. His expression changed so violently during the outburst. The judge restored order and instructed the prosecution to pause the tape. Diddy's breathing was labored. His hands trembled on the defense table. His pristine image, the billionaire mogul, the unbothered icon, was gone. And in its place sat a man, visibly panicked, cornered, and crumbling in front of a jury. For the prosecution, this was no accident. Court insiders later confirmed what many suspected. They'd timed this tape deliberately. After days of slow build-up, small testimonies, and methodical cross-examinations, they chose this moment, day 3, because they believed it would be when Diddy's guard was finally down. And it worked. He showed the jury everything they needed to see. Rage, guilt, loss of control, all without anyone cross-examining him. And Prince's voice hadn't even finished. After a brief recess to regain control of the courtroom, the judge instructed the prosecution to resume playback of the Prince audio. But by then, the atmosphere had completely changed. No one whispered, no one typed. Even the court sketch artist had stopped drawing. All eyes were locked on the courtroom speakers. The voice of a dead man now controlled the most powerful room in entertainment law. Prince's voice picked up where it left off, with him describing what he called an organized system of manipulation that he had seen firsthand. He spoke slowly, choosing his words like a man who knew what he was saying might never be heard again unless the worst happened. What I've seen, it's not something you can just forget, he said. They make it seem glamorous, but I've watched it ruin people.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
He referenced parties hosted at Diddy's private residences. Again, not just vague recollections, but exact details. Layouts of rooms, names of guests, even the color of the furniture in certain lounges. It all lined up with earlier testimonies from Cassie Ventura and 2 other unnamed witnesses. Most chilling, however, were Prince's references to NDAS and hush payments. "I've seen the contracts," Prince said in the recording. "I've seen the money change hands. $2 million here, $1.5 million there, and I've seen what happens to the people who try to leave. They disappear, not physically, but musically, socially. Gone." Diddy, still seated but visibly shaking, stared straight ahead with a blank expression. His eyes didn't blink for nearly a minute, according to a court reporter seated behind him. One of his lawyers quietly passed him a folded tissue. He didn't take it. Then Prince dropped another bomb. "I warned him at the Grammy after-party," he said, referring to Diddy. "I told him, flat out, this is going to catch up to you. He told me, you might be Prince, but I own this game, and people like you don't change it. They get erased." That line reverberated through the room like thunder. Diddy didn't react outwardly, but his jaw tensed. A juror in the front row shook her head. Another leaned back, stunned. This wasn't just a piece of evidence anymore. It was a character assassination with surgical precision. From someone with no reason to lie, no stake in the trial, and no possibility of being cross-examined. Prince, from beyond the grave, was painting a portrait of Diddy not as a flawed man, but as a manipulative predator with a carefully crafted empire of silence and control. And the prosecution wasn't even finished with the tape. If you've ever watched a trial fall apart in real time, this was the moment. The prosecution had built a slow-burning fire, with Cassie Ventura's 4 days of testimony, threading together years of abuse, manipulation, and secrets. But now, through the voice of Prince, they had poured gasoline on it. Prince began explaining his own fears. "I didn't speak out during my life," he said, "because I saw what happened to people who did. I watched them lose their contracts, get dropped from tours, shut out of award shows. It's not just about power. It's about fear. Fear keeps everyone quiet." He detailed a moment at one of Diddy's events where he believed a guest was being secretly recorded. "I saw cameras in the chandelier," Prince said. "I mentioned it to a producer who shrugged and said, 'That's just how it is.' The implication? Blackmail. Surveillance. Control not just through money, but through secrets." It matched stories that had surfaced years ago, rumors of footage Diddy kept for leverage. None of it ever confirmed. Until now. Prince didn't speculate. He documented. "I've got files," he said. "Hard drives, tapes, photographs, all dated, all organized. I gave copies to 3 people. If anything happens to me, check with them." This was no longer just a recording. This was a whistleblower's blueprint, and it explained why Diddy had lost control earlier in the day. He likely knew what else might be out there. He likely recognized details that only someone inside his inner circle could have known. The precision of the tape, its alignment with the prosecution's existing timeline, was too perfect to ignore. As the recording neared its conclusion, Prince said something that may haunt this trial forever. "I've spent my life trying to protect my music, but now I realize it's the people who needed protection. And no one was doing it. Not really. Not when it mattered." The recording clicked off. Silence. The courtroom stayed frozen. And then, the prosecutor delivered her line. "No further questions, Your Honor." She didn't have to say anything else. Prince had done the heavy lifting. From the grave, Immediately after court was adjourned for the day, Diddy's team moved fast. They filed an emergency motion to suppress the Prince recording, claiming the audio's origin couldn't be independently verified, that the witness was deceased and couldn't be cross-examined, and that the tape was prejudicial in nature. But they knew it was too late. The jury had heard it. And worse, they'd seen Diddy break. Legal analysts outside the courtroom were already reacting. "You don't recover from something like that," said one. "The jury just saw the defendant lose control while hearing the voice of one of the most respected artists of all time." Back inside the courtroom, reporters noted that Diddy barely spoke after the tape finished. He leaned forward on the defense table, elbows digging into the wood, staring at the floor. His lawyer tried to speak to him. He nodded, but didn't respond. He looked smaller, fragile, like the world had finally caught up with him. But perhaps the most damning moment came not from the courtroom, but from the jury box. As the judge dismissed the jury for the evening, 3 jurors lingered, glancing back at Diddy. One shook their head slowly, another appeared visibly disturbed. You don't need a transcript to understand what was happening in their minds. They had just witnessed something that would stay with them forever. Prince had done more than damage Diddy's defense. He'd altered the trajectory of the entire trial. And the scariest part for Diddy? Prince said he'd left more behind. As the courtroom remained silent after the recording's final moment, the full weight of Prince's message settled like a fog over everyone present. It wasn't just what he had said. It was how he said it. Measured, mournful, intentional. His voice was calm, but his words carried the weight of fear, frustration, and finality. The very last thing Prince said in the recording, right before it clicked off, was this: "If anything happens to me, make sure this gets to the right people. This isn't just about protecting myself. It's about protecting the ones who never got to speak." No music followed, no signature falsetto, just silence. When the audio cut, it was like the air had been vacuumed from the room. Nobody clapped, nobody whispered. Even the gavel didn't sound for several seconds. The judge looked down at his notes, glanced toward the jury, and took a long breath before resuming. Everyone knew what had just happened wasn't just a legal tactic. It was a cultural earthquake. The judge gave a calm but firm reminder to the jury. You are not to consider the source's death as evidence of truth or guilt. Evaluate the content in context with the full record. But anyone watching could see it in the jurors' faces. They weren't just processing testimony. They were feeling it. Diddy sat motionless, almost ghostly. His hands were still, his expression blank. He had no fight left in his eyes. For the first time in the trial, he looked less like a billionaire mogul and more like a man facing the real possibility of collapse. And though court was adjourned for the day, no one truly left the courtroom. They drifted, stunned, like survivors of something they couldn't yet explain. Outside, reporters used words like unprecedented, game changer, and career-ending. Legal pundits on streaming panels were already speculating on how this one piece of audio might tip the balance of the entire case. But perhaps the most important shift had already happened. Not in the law, but in the narrative. Diddy was no longer a man accused. He was now a man named, by someone the world still loved, trusted, and missed. And that trust? It couldn't be cross-examined. Jurors are instructed to judge only what's presented in court, to set emotion aside and deal only with facts. But no human being can unhear a dead legend naming names, describing crimes, and pleading for the world to listen. And no juror can unsee what happened to Diddy's carefully crafted mask once that recording played. What the jury witnessed on day 3 was a psychological breakdown in real time. A man who, for decades, had been at the top of his industry, unraveling in front of their eyes. They saw his body jerk upright when Prince named a specific party date. They saw him mutter, sweat, twitch, and then they saw him explode, screaming across the courtroom that Prince was lying before being threatened with contempt by the judge. But the most damaging part wasn't the outburst. It was the silence after. Diddy didn't recover. Not emotionally, not physically, not legally. He sat with slumped shoulders for the rest of the day, occasionally putting his head in his hands. And the jury, once mildly attentive, now leaned in for every moment. They weren't watching the lawyers anymore. They were watching him. This shift is what prosecutors pray for but rarely get. It's one thing to present strong evidence. It's another to create a moment of transformation, where jurors go from neutral to locked in, from skeptical to believing. And that's what happened here. Psychologists call it anchor bias. When someone experiences a pivotal moment of impact, it becomes the lens through which they view everything else. From this point on, every piece of defense testimony would be seen through the lens of Prince's voice and Diddy's reaction to it. One juror was even seen wiping tears from her eyes as the audio ended. Another clasped his hands together in a way that looked more like prayer than composure. Whatever story the defense thought they were telling, it had just been drowned out by a voice that couldn't be cross-examined and a defendant who had finally stopped pretending. The day after Prince's recording played, the court came back to life, but nothing felt the same. Even before testimony resumed, there was speculation that more recordings could exist. That Prince's vault, long rumored to hold hundreds of unreleased works, might contain other pieces of information beyond just music. One insider from the prosecution's team, speaking off-record, said flatly, "We believe Prince was documenting something bigger, and this may not be the only thing he left behind." The possibility sent ripples across the entertainment industry. Who else might be mentioned? What other names are sealed inside that vault? How far did Prince's concerns really go? What's clear is that this trial is no longer just about Cassie Ventura's lawsuit. It's no longer just about freak-offs, NDAs, and past abuse. It has become a referendum on the entire culture Diddy helped build. And thanks to Prince, that culture now has a voice of resistance. Investigators are now said to be requesting additional subpoenas related to Prince's estate, trying to locate hard drives, tapes, and written notes he may have left behind. If authenticated, these materials could open up new cases, add new charges, or even implicate other powerful figures who were once thought untouchable. Meanwhile, Diddy's legal team is in damage control mode. They filed motions to exclude the Prince tape, claiming it creates emotional prejudice. But the judge has already ruled it admissible. And even if it's formally excluded later, the damage is already done. The public has heard it. The jury has heard it. Diddy heard it and broke down. Now, as we head into the next phase of the trial, everyone is asking the same question. What else is hiding in Prince's vault? And more importantly, who will it expose next? Because if day 3 was the moment the case cracked open, then what comes next might be the moment the entire industry begins to fall.